I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, The Lonesome Crown, all published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today, we're going to be reviewing the science fiction novel Salvation by Peter F. Hamilton. Hey man, I love me some Peter F. Hamilton novels. I got all of his collection right here. He's done, let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 15 books by Peter F. Hamilton that I've read. This is the 16th. It's the beginning of a new series. It's not set in his Commonwealth universe, or so he says. All of these other books are set in the Commonwealth universe where, it's kind of like a big epic science fiction space opera universe that he's kind of constructed and set all of his stories in. Well, this one is a diversion from that, this Salvation. First of all, we always talk about the covers, and I gotta say, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here before we discuss the book. I'm not a big fan of this cover. I mean, it's okay. The graphic design is fine. The little design they've got is fine. But let's compare it to the more illustrated John Harris painting, with the nice battleships and things like that. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that I'm going to rant about. Paperbacks for tens of thousands of years, mass market paperbacks were published in this size. All of these Star Wars novels, all of the Peter F. Hamilton novels, they were all published in this similar size. Can you see how they're the same size? Well, some jackass in publishing about 15 years ago thought, hey, it's not broken, but let's fix it. Let's make all the mass market paperbacks just slightly bigger. See how it's just slightly bigger? See how it's just slightly bigger? God, doesn't that just bother the fuck out of you? God, I hate it. Oh my God. So I was going to do an entire video about this very subject and just go on a massive, mad-faced, belligerent rant about who was the moron that came up with the decision to change the mass market paperback format to this elongated bullshit. Well, so we're giving the cover of this an F, a grand fucking failure for screwing with the format. God damn it, I will do the video. I will do the video where I rant about this stuff. I'm going to do it. Let's talk about Salvation itself. This book, I love Peter F. Hamilton books. I'm going to tell you, this book started off a little bit odd for me. And in fact, it's kind of reminds me of Hyperion by Dan Simmons in that it's more of a setup book for the characters, because this is the first book in a trilogy. And this is more of a setup book, and it's almost formatted exactly kind of like Hyperion, where each of the characters get to tell their backstory before we get into the real story. So the setup is, this is set in 2204, not that far in the future, where space travel is not done through starships, but more through stargates, like that movie Stargate, where you just step into a portal and bada boom, bada bing, you're in a different planet, right? So that's how space travel is done. There's no starships or anything like that. I love starships. Now, why do we got to get rid of the starships for stargates? I don't know. So, yeah, okay. And so they step into Stargate. Well, anyway, it doesn't mean that there aren't starships. It doesn't mean that there aren't starships in this, because there are. Because the main plot of this story is a starship crashes on a planet that's light years away. And so we've got to send an investigative team to that planet to figure out, because it's a mysterious ship and it's got some mysterious things going on with it. So we're going to send an investigative team to go investigate this starship crash that's on a planet a long ways away. And the whole plot of this book, book one, is just the backstory of the crew that goes to investigate. Kind of like Hyperion, was sort of like the backstory of the people that were going to go to the planet Hyperion and see what who the Shrike was. Well, this is the backstory of all the people that are going to investigate the crashed spaceship. Not only that, but we learn from the very prologues that one of them is actually an alien infiltrator, sort of like Battlestar Galactica, how the Cylons could look like human. Well, there's actual aliens walking amongst us, and one of our crew that is going to go investigate this spaceship crash is an alien in disguise, and these aliens have bad stuff planned for humanity. And in the first prologue, which was actually kind of cool, it shows the aliens as they launch from their alien realm across the universe, because they find the radio signals from Earth, right? And so they're like, okay, there's this place called Earth out there, and we're going to go see what kind of creatures live on this planet. So they send these four aliens across the universe to investigate who humans are and what's going on. From the radio signals they've got, they don't like what's going on, because humanity seems like a very war-torn sort of, people, and they're like, we don't want that, so we're just gonna, if they're that, we're gonna just get rid of them. So they send these four aliens, and I like the prologue where the aliens come across the universe and they come to Earth and they sort of just infiltrate Earth and they take on human characteristics. All right. So that's the setup. One of our crew members happens to be one of these aliens in disguise, but we don't know who it is. The reader doesn't know. And this book is a setup clearly for the next two books in the trilogy, and if you saw my review of Hyperion, you know that I did not like Hyperion as much as the following books. For the very same reason. This is just a setup. This is the backstory of all those characters. And so I'm hoping, just like with Hyperion, the Hyperion series, that the Salvation series, that the next two books start to kick ass for me. Because this one was just kind of, though it was interesting, and Peter Hamilton is a fantastic writer, and our characters, the characters that he set up, it's just like Hyperion. They're very interesting characters. So the Earth has become a very non-gender specific society in this thing, and that's another confusing thing, is because the characters are sort of binary, and they're fluid with their gender, and so sometimes they're male, sometimes they're female, sometimes they're in between, and he uses those gender-specific pronouns like thee, they, him, he, and sometimes that can be extremely confusing for what's going on. Not a criticism of the book, I'm just saying it's there, and it takes some time to get used to. Another thing, but I do like the characters, I do like the crew. There's Yuri, he's the security team for the big Earth conglomerate corporation, and then there's Callum, who's and then there's Martinez, the mercenary, and Alec, the FBI detective, and Loy and Edmund, and there's a group of people that we learn their backstories, and they're all very interesting, just like in Hyperion. So if you are like the setup of Hyperion and the way this is almost kind of the same thing. There's also a side plot that's not mentioned much. It just comes in once in a while. A side plot of some people that live in the far, far distant future. And I'm still trying to figure out what that has to do with the story here, but I'm sure that it's going to tie into everything by the end of the trilogy. Don't know yet, though. Don't know. However, I love me some Peter F. Hamilton. I'm going to tell you, and we're going to review all of these books eventually, but I thought I would start with this one because it's the new trilogy he's got, not part of the Commonwealth saga, and I loved the Commonwealth saga. So we're dropping this in the point range a little bit just because of that, and just because it's a little bit like Hyperion, and it's a setup for the rest of the story. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. Still great writing, still big, huge, massive science fiction ideas. That's the thing with Peter F. Hamilton. There's the ideas that he's got are so big and grand that sometimes it's just hard to wrap your head around them. This guy's got some just massive outer space, just stuff going on. And I love him for that. So I'm going to give this 7 out of 10, and we're going to hope for the future that the Salvation Lost and Saints of Salvation. I can't remember what the next two are, but I'm hoping they pick up the pace, because this was a fairly good novel, most of his stuff is fantastic.